Hello again. So this one is called All About Beef. I've been waiting for months to make this film and share it with you. So it's my great pleasure to do that on this Sunday afternoon before I go out. And I very rarely ever do this, but I actually have bothered to create a kind of a storyboard for this one. So, the story of beef, here we go. And we're going to begin this story by referring to cows. So, the cow is a most extraordinary, multi-dimensional being. So I'm going to take you out to look at things from the biggest picture on this. So what I would like you to understand is that cows are extraterrestrial beings that have chosen to incarnate onto this planet at the time that we are here as human beings, and they are very much the role of spiritual midwives for us. They are actually helping us in our awakening process. If you look at the cow, and especially if you are a student of Rudolf Steiner, you already know what I'm going to say. Cows have horns, and the horns are a very particular shape. If you look at the horn, it's actually the shape of a vortex, which is one of the fundamental sacred geometry shapes in the universe. Ooh, that was a very loud buzzing insect just there. So, what the cows do is they literally have the ability to connect with the wider reality through their horns, which is rather sad that in most of England, most of the English cows have had their horns removed. It's called disbudding. Quite a disgusting practice in my opinion, because it means you take away one of the fundamental natures of the cow. But I am very privileged to live very near Glastonbury, and I know of entire herds of cows that do have their horns. They're like Highland cattle. And my experience so far of India is Indian cows, well, of course they have their horns. Why would they remove them? That would be insane in the views of the Indian people. So here's the thing. The cows, being highly advanced beings, far more advanced than humans, and I know a lot of humans would struggle with their arrogance to deal with that one, but I'm saying it as it is. That's my understanding. Far more advanced than we are. And this gives them the ability to do things which we couldn't conceive of, such as to live in the law of allowing. And the law of allowing means that they have voluntarily, as an entire species, chosen to dedicate themselves to be in service to us in our evolution and our development. Because, boy, human beings, we need all the help we can get. We have the spirits of the cats and the dogs, which are extraterrestrial races with their own powers and abilities, for which I am extraordinarily grateful. I have a bias. My bias is towards cats, but I appreciate dogs too. But my love is always with the felines because of the way they are. That's just me. So the cows allow us to do all the things we do to them. So in India, as we know, they are worshipped and adored, and in many countries they are treated in an appalling manner. In some countries they are factory farmed, kept inside cages, inside buildings. How dreadful for a cow to experience that. In England they're kept in fields where they eat grass. Now in some countries, especially in India and Corsica, that's not true. They get to roam wild, and they get, certainly in India, they get to go wherever they want. There's no fences containing them as far as I've ever seen, except in one ashram actually. And in Corsica they are in the fields, but they have so many bushes and trees in their fields that they can browse, so they eat so many more foods other than grass, and this obviously makes a difference. So when I'm eating the beef over here, it means I'm having the beef from the cows in the villages which are wandering around leading a free life. That's magnificent, of course. So my point is, they choose to allow us to do whatever we choose to do, which means keeping him in factory farms, keeping him in fields, giving him a grass monoculture to eat, allowing them to roam free, all these different experiences. And as we know, in some countries the whole process of the slaughter of these animals is absolutely appalling. It's really badly done, and the meat processing industry in the USA is one to make your blood run cold if you want to go and explore that one. So what I'm saying is they allow all this because they're vastly intelligent beings, far more intelligent than we are, and they wouldn't just let this happen to them. They're not innocent victims. Sorry, human arrogance, they're not. Conscious choices have been made. So why? And what do they do? Well, they literally are a living sacrifice to us, and when they are killed and they are made into a substance which can be consumed from their physical bodies, 3D level of reality we're talking about here, well, this is what I'm really here to tell you about. I'm here to tell you about the story of beef. So when we have the food which is prepared, which we call meat, and that's beef, then this is what I'm going to talk to you about. So the first thing I want to throw in is a remark about the French. The French have got slang names for different nationalities. Many people have this. The Dutch have a slang name for the Germans have a slang name for the Dutch. Käsekopfen. So the Germans call the Dutch the cheeseheads, right? Well, the French call the English the roast beef. So it's all the roast beef. It means that they are the roast beef. Okay? Now, if we go into history particularly, we discover something quite extraordinary, because the British Empire was formed primarily through its military arm, its army, and its navy. And guess what? Yes, that's right. The army and the navy were sustained upon the principal food for the military, and the principal food for the British military, which created the empire, was beef. Preserved beef, particularly in the navy, because the beef was corned, a special preparation, kept in barrels, and that's what the soldiers were fed on, and the people in the navy. Now, if you go through to World War I and World War II, British Army, they ate something which is called bully beef. I don't exactly know what the preparation was, but basically the thing about the British Army is they are renowned throughout the world as being incredibly strong, powerful fighters, and actually very difficult to defeat. I've made a study of warfare throughout history, and the British and the Germans are very, very difficult military armies to defeat, and it's because of the food that they were given, and they contrast markedly with the military from some other countries, which basically are, well, very weak, let's put it that way. It's to do with what they eat and what they drink. So that's the first connection with beef, is military strength and prowess, particularly in the British Army. Now I want to move to another field altogether, which is to do with the field of health. In Britain, and especially in London, going back in the early 20th century, there were no pharmaceutical drugs. They hadn't become popularized at that point. So the main treatment for the people that ended up with these terrible illnesses and end up into an English or London hospital, well, if they were in not such a bad state, they would be fed beef. If they were in a worse state, they'd be given beef broth. But if they were in a really bad state, they would be given the most refined form of beef it's possible to create, which is beef tea. So basically, beef broth is beef boiled in water with maybe other things added. Beef tea is that broth which has been very finely strained and filtered, so it's a clear liquid, a brown coloured, in other words, no particulates, liquid, and that would be served to the patients that were most severely ill. So what's all this about? Okay, well, this is the big thing for you. Having been a health counsellor since I was 27, and having had so many people come through my process of taking them through the journey towards helping them into better health, one of the things I noticed time after time, when I discovered whatever deficiency they were suffering from, and I would do the research in more recent years to do the Googling, and what is the best source of this mineral, this nutrient, that nutrient, whatever it was. It always, number one, top of the pops, always beef. There's a particular amino acid called L-carnitine. It's not generally that available. What's the best source of L-carnitine? Beef. What's the best source of zinc? Beef. What's the best source of magnesium? Beef. I could go on, so I'll stop. So the idea is, if you're on a beef diet, you put yourself into a situation of maximum nutrition, and if you do it for long enough, you will have no deficiencies in any nutrient whatsoever. That's the promise, and that's the reality of consuming beef. So this is what was happening. London hospitals were using beef as their primary treatment. Of course there was surgery, there were other methods, of course there were, but that was the main thing, to get people on their feet after some debilitating condition. Feed them beef. So my next one I want to go to is for about, I think it's more like 12 years now. For the last 12 years I've been immersing myself in Korean culture through fiction, and specifically through Korean TV shows, not really the films. The film's 1.5 hours, you can't learn jack shit in the film, it's my personal opinion. A Korean TV show, one episode usually lasts between 1 hour and 1.5 hours, and an average TV show would have 16 to 20 episodes. If you watch The Princess Key, that's got 53 episodes. Can you imagine the amount of detail they get into shows with that amount of time? You get to explore the characters, their early lives, their past lives, their past life relationships. It's fascinating. It's the best spiritual education I've had in the last 6+ years watching Korean TV shows. Doesn't matter whether they're historical or contemporary, the message is pummeled into you over and over again. If the person needs healing, give them beef. Give them Korean beef, specifically Korean beef. These are Koreans, they want Korean beef. So it's just a well-known thing in the Korean culture that it's the food of rejuvenation and revitalization. Right, I've left the best till last. I can put my little crib sheet away now. Sorry, Gopal, as I knocked the notebook on the chair. It's okay. It's all over. It wasn't that bad. Some of you know that I went to 2 universities. In the first university I studied general biology, and I occupied the arts block, and I boycotted my exams, and I got thrown out after a year. The second university I went to, University College Cardiff in Wales, that one I chose to study microbiology. Now, as a microbiologist, one of the things I got to do a 6-month honours project for my honours degree in a university, in a hospital, in a teaching hospital in Cardiff, and it's called the Heath Hospital. So I spent 6 months doing this research project, and I was studying a particular microbe, a particular bacteria called Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and I was studying the presence of this bacteria in sink waste traps and in the flower vases, because it's a problem. It's actually a worldwide problem, this bacteria, because in everyday life it's everywhere. It's in your home, it's in your garden, it's in your balcony. It doesn't bother anyone. If you get so seriously ill you end up in the high dependency unit, what they used to call intensive care unit, you become very, very susceptible to pathogenic bacteria. And Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which is harmless in normal situations, you could become infected by it. And at that particular point, when I was doing my degree, there were only 3 antibiotics that worked against it. So out of all the hundreds and hundreds of antibiotics, all of them except for 3 had no effect whatsoever. And actually, when I went into medical pathology, I can remember it dropped down to there only being 1. So it's a major issue, this. So that's what I was studying. Now, at the end of my studies, I wanted to actually keep these microbes, and I ended up giving a whole series of all the samples I got to this professor in Brazil, in Recife, because he was studying the same microbe in Brazil. So that's what got me into the idea of preserving my microbes. So what I did is I got a sample from the agar plate and put it onto a platinum wire loop. That's how you handle these things. And I got a little glass tube about the size of my thumb. It's called a bijou bottle. So I've got 100 of these bijou bottles in this big tray, and for each sample of the bacteria, take it from the platinum wire and I put it into the bijou bottle. Now this bijou bottle contains, wait for it, yes, beef broth. Now here's the thing. If I put the bacteria in the beef broth, what they will do is they will do something completely remarkable. Now, in order for you to understand how remarkable that is, I'll have to explain what happens if I put them into a conventional nutrient broth. I get some bacteria, just a tiny little scrape on the end of the platinum wire, literally smaller than a full stop's worth, tiny amount, millions and millions. If I put them into a nutrient broth, this is what they would do. They would go, wow, whoopee, there's all this nutrient, we'll start multiplying. Feeding and multiplying, and more and more of the bacteria will be produced. And actually they are able to double their numbers in 20 minutes. So within a very short space of time, within hours, what they would do is they would literally gobble up all the nutrients in the nutrient broth. And of course, like all organisms, they intake nutrients and then they excrete wastes. They would excrete their wastes into the container, the flask of nutrient broth. And eventually they would actually be so toxified by their wastes, and they would be so starved because they were using up all the nutrient, they would actually all die. That's a normal situation in the microbiological laboratory. You get some bacteria, put them into nutrient broth, and within a short space of time, the broth is full with microbes, and it won't take very long before they'll all die in their own toxicity. Quite a graphic illustration for you. Now, when I put the tiny little full stop's worth of bacteria into this little bijou bottle, it contains beef broth, which basically is minced beef which has been boiled in water, and you can see the little minced particles, and it's a brown colour. When I put my sample of Pseudomonas aeruginosa into this little bottle and put the lid on and put them away in a warm place to multiply, they do something which is completely unheard of. This is what they do. They begin the same process as before. They start to multiply, they start to feed on the nutrients, but they don't do what they did in that flask of nutrient broth. What happens is the numbers of bacteria increase, they reach a plateau, and they stop multiplying. They stop multiplying, which means the amount of toxic waste they produce is limited and controlled. And it means because they stop multiplying, they actually use the nutrients up less and less and less until they reach a point of stasis whereby they remain alive. So the reason why this is so important as a microbiologist, I could send these 90 bottles off to this Brazilian professor and literally posted. It would have taken them weeks to get there. It didn't matter, because those bacteria will stay in a state of aliveness forever, unless someone was to do something about it, such as pour them down the sink or whatever. So long as they're in that little bijou bottle, you have actually created, in reality, in terms of human experience, they aren't going to last forever. They won't be there for thousands of years, but from the point of view of doing microbiological research, they last for years. So this is the final clue about beef. There's something about beef and longevity. So what the British Army, the British Empire, the British hospitals and the Korean culture tell us, beef is about strength, it's about maximal nutrition. And my personal experience so far, almost at the end of my second visit to India, I just went into spontaneous fasting. I did a 24-hour fast without wanting to or trying to, because I didn't want to eat. I was so completely nutritioned up. I didn't want or need anything. Same thing happened when I was in England just a few days before I came here. I went into another spontaneous 24-hour fast. So I've actually I can understand viscerally in my body how these microbes feel. So that's the key about the beef. Full nutrition on all parameters on all levels of all nutrients, strengthening, and longevity. So that's why beef's so exciting. So now you've seen this, I reckon when you go in and watch the films I'm going to be uploading next to do with beef, to do with actually how to prepare the protocol, which is the one that Ahmed has created together with his masseur Gopi here in Bangalore in India, which is what I've taken on. And I went back to England on the 6th of December. I've been doing it for another 2 months. I've been doing it for 3 months now. Quite something. So all the love to you, and it's time to get up, Gopal. It's time to get up once more. So always look forward to your comments, anything you want to say, anything you want to share, any questions, and all the love to you.